Ready.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. March 3rd, 2026. What a beautiful day. Calling to order the City Council work session for this March 3rd, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. And I'm going to ask our clerk, Sharon Allison, to call the roll, and we're going to talk about going into closed session.
Councilmember Agnew. Here. Councilmember Jackson. Here. Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Rooster. Here. Mayor Hovland.
Here. We've got three meeting topics this evening. The first one involves us going into closed session to discuss the pedestrian bridge issue and the legal representation we've been getting and the advice we're getting tonight with respect to trying to find a pathway to a resolution. And so first thing we need to do is think about going into closed session, as I mentioned, and as we're permitted to do under Minnesota statutes 13D.05 subdivision 3. Is there a motion to move into closed session as permitted by Minnesota statutes 13D.05 subdivision 3 to discuss the Grandview pedestrian bridge ADA inquiry with the Department of Justice?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to go into closed session. Any further discussion? Those in favor of moving into closed session for the purpose stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're in closed session. We're back in open session.
Mayor did not hear if you seconded the motion.
I did.
Pierce.
James did. Carolyn moved. James seconded. And for the record, we had a discussion about in closed session as permitted under Minnesota statutes, discussing the work of our staff with the U.S. Department of Justice on an appropriate sort of solution to the Grandview pedestrian bridge ADA issue, and we're on a good track. All right, now we're going to go into the next phase of our meeting here, which session is budget. City manager calls it budget kickoff. Or maybe it's the assistant city manager that calls it budget kickoff.
It's a group decision.
It's a group decision.
Or it's a team
Decision.
it's a team game. It's a kickoff.
Sure is.
So we're here tonight to give you the kickoff, right? And give you a kind of a top level view of what we see as our timeline, sort of the top level view of where we are from a fiscal standpoint right now, at least how we're projecting 2027 to be. So let's get started, and if we hopefully we can complete this at a point where Jennifer can give her digital accessibility lecture too.
Lecture.
So, Pop.
All right, so like we said, this study session marks the official start of the 2027 budget season. This kickoff presentation will provide you a high-level overview of what is our annual budget preparation process and our timeline, more importantly. Just a reminder, where we made commitments for the 2026 approved levy and budget, and where we are projecting for 2027 based off of those numbers. So with that being said, Council is well aware that the annual budget is a multifaceted year-round effort guided by the city's strategic plan. In December, we approved the 26th levy and budget. Currently, like mentioned earlier, departments are working hot and heavy into reviewing their existing base budget for 27 based off of what was approved in 26, as well as taking a review of all the capital improvement projects and whether or not there's any new submissions that needs to be made. Tonight, we are meeting to kick off the budget, and then our next point will be on March 17th with the State of Utilities, where you'll be hearing from Chad and his team. And then we will then be meeting in April and June at our usual council retreat to figure out where council stands in terms of priorities and goals for staff to better develop or focus in on for 27 budget and for CIP. With this being said, I want to call out that our goal is, of course, to bring this to you in August of 18th after that council retreat for feedback, right? And then we will then take those feedback and then present it to you again on September 1st, which will then come down to some more refining or whatnot for us to take a vote on the preliminary levy on September 15th. Throughout the timeline of that, in the past, we have added some work sessions here and there to fine tune the budget and the capital improvement plan, but with that, I just want to call out those dates.
So, would you go back to that part again? We've got a real split work session here, or council retreat. I mean, they're quite a ways apart in terms of time. Were you thinking about after the first one you'd get to work, or after the second one? Are they both going to be dedicated to budget?
For retreat, we're gonna also talk a little bit about the city manager transition process in April, but we're definitely gonna have a portion of it dedicated in April of what we can share from a budget perspective. And then we're gonna come back to you with more information in June. So just as things come in, so we kind of have lined it up a little bit that we'll build on that.
So in answer to the mayor's question, we will get some signals from them on April 28th and work and
Yep.
present that work in June 23rd.
Yep, and then work some more, and then bring you a budget in August.
All right,
Well,
yep.
You know, just sort of this is totally subjective, but I think the last 2 years, we felt like we got backed up against the clock at the end of the year. And to me, I'd rather really hit it heavy on budget April 28th and try to give you guys the guidance you need from a staff standpoint. And I'd rather have a separate session about hiring a city, you know, a consultant, as opposed to burying it in the work session, or if we have time, talk about it.
Yeah.
On the 28th.
We're planning.
In fact, I was thinking we'd start talking about hiring a consultant yet this month.
So we are working on the RFP for getting the city manager search started. Separate from that process, we're also working on developing the profile that would go into the actual search process so that they'd be married up in kind of May so that we can have that position posted. We are currently holding 3 hours for each of those sessions. So our thought process is that we would spend 2 hours talking about budget, 1 hour talking about that transition, which might impact some of the budget aspects, things, if there's priorities that you have that are outside of that. And then coming back in June for the additional 3 hour session to talk about more budget related items. And that would be tours included in the June session.
Julie.
Could we have a moderator who is good at municipal budgets? You know, somebody who has that are there such people?
You raised a good question, is whether we even need a moderator
Yeah.
to talk budget. I mean, and I
It's
don't
true.
want to, my feeling is, I don't really like the idea of paying for a moderator to come in here twice. If they're coming from, like Susan, Sarah,
Sarah, yeah.
we had from out of town.
We were planning on bringing in a facilitator to help with the city manager transition conversation, because that's a facilitated conversation. The other stuff we were not planning on because of the style and the fact that we're focusing on a budget. We were not planning to hire anybody, so we weren't bringing in Sarah or consultant. We're gonna do that, guide you through that same process like we did last year,
That's
but
good.
without Sarah.
That's good.
Why do we need one for the city manager conversation?
Well, we would like staff to also be able to participate and in order to be able to make sure, so that person's gonna help us to write a summary profile based off all the feedback. So it's a neutral body that's combining both the community feedback, the staff feedback that we hear, your guys' feedback, which will give you a draft of this report to reflect on in advance. And then if there's any areas that we hear, or maybe we hear from the community something different than what we're hearing from staff or different than what we're hearing from you, that maybe we dive in deeper on those areas. I don't know how much variation we're gonna have of what we're hearing, but we'll know that soon, hopefully.
That's a
Would that
good
be the
question.
search firm that
Keep
does?
going.
Would that be the search firm then that does that?
We
Or
want-
another party?
It's a different party because we won't have a search firm picked by that point in time. So we are trying to move this along as fast as possible, and so that's why we're choosing that timeline.
I would say that we just wait to have that conversation until I don't think we need to have it during a retreat. I would just schedule it during a work session once we have the selection firm selected.
Okay, it's just gonna, your timeline, I can go back and work on what that's gonna look like. It is going to change the timeline and probably delay the posting of the position, which what I heard was you guys wanted to be more aggressive about the timeline of getting it done. The stuff starts to move quickly in May and June, July of getting the position posted, giving time for applicants to apply, and then if you guys wanted to interview, to try to get a candidate and offer made by early September. So it just plays into it. So this allowed us to be able to keep that process moving pretty quickly.
When were you thinking about having this kind of joint conversation with council and certain staff members? Or all staff members, or have that facilitated?
Yeah, so what we're doing right now is we're just about to finalize a survey that's gonna go out to the community. We're gonna get a bunch of feedback from the community about what they wanna see in their next city manager. Same questions or very paralleled questions we're gonna ask of city staff. So that's, all city staff will be allowed to also participate in that process. And then we're gonna take a summary, ask you guys the same questions, ask ELT the same questions, put it all together and say, here's what we heard from council, here's what we heard from the community. There's a lot of consistency in these buckets, but maybe there's 3 things that we should talk about more because there is differing opinions in these 3 buckets. And really just find out how much of the opinions are similar or if there's any differences. It might be really easy to get to the next step. I don't know that yet. I don't really know where there's consensus or where there's not consensus until after we get back the survey results.
Do we have someone from council reviewing the survey?
You guys are welcome to look at it. We have a council committee. There's 3 questions. That's all we have, right? Or 4, because we asked a bucket, blank, what do we miss question too.
I think it's a good thought, Kate. We should look at those questions before they go out.
Yeah, that's fine. We can send them to you after this meeting.
So let's go back to the budget issue. Between now and April 28th, there's nothing that we're going to be doing budget related based on what you're anticipating.
We'll give you a preview on the 17th on utility rates and that budget impacts, because we heard a lot of questions during the rate study last fall.
On the utility study, is that what you're talking about up there?
On March 17th.
March 17th?
We did a utility rate study last year, and there was a lot of questions that was asked from council. Therefore, Chad and his team is presenting, we call it the State of the Utilities, to give you more of a deeper dive into what's causing the utilities' costs of operations to be the way it is.
A lot of drivers, and we know that 2 of you aren't going to be at that meeting, so I would offer to have 1 or both of you come and we'll present to you separately at Public Works, hopefully during the day, if we can make that work. So I
Get
know,
the National League of Cities?
I know Member Jackson and Rissa are going to be gone, so we would offer that to you 2 to get you up to speed on that presentation at a later date.
But really, if we come into April 28th, the first retreat, you'll probably disagree with what I'm about to say, but I think it is true. You'll have a sense of what the budget should be by then. Now, you'll have a different confidence factor. So I won't debate you on that, right? It'll have a certain confidence factor. But if we have city departments between Feb 24 and the end of March, looking at their budget, CIP, like you said, based on the previous year, and then we do our rates, the state of the utilities, we come into April, we'll have some semblance of what we think the budget might be at a certain confidence factor.
True, I would say staff is requested to have all their budgets and projects in by April 1st. And so with that, that's really raw data with finance haven't gone through to scrub and scrutinize the data yet too.
Yeah.
We would have some sort of form of it available, but in terms of confidence level, whether it would sustain as what it is ultimately by when I would show it to you in August, it would vary differently.
Right, it won't be the same.
Correct.
Every budget we do is wrong until it's always wrong.
Until it's final.
Right, until it's final. And then day one,
It's still wrong.
it's still wrong, right? Because things change.
Right.
So your confidence factor coming into April could be 40%, 50%, whatever.
Right.
But it at least is something that we'll have, that we can start to ask these material questions to help refine.
Right, and what I have next is also may answer what that is in terms of confidence level, yeah, but I have something to show you. So, with me proceeding on this, I just want to show as a reminder, I have a next slide too, but this is just a reminder of where we committed to for 2026 adopted levy, at a 7.94, right? We approved that in December. We made that commitment. With that being said, to answer your question, Councilmember Pierce, what does that mean for 2027? So Edina usually, we've always done biennial budgeting where at December of last year, you would have approved a biennial budget, but as you can probably recall, we only approved 26 because 27 was still in the works, right? We didn't really work on that year. But with that being said, department directors still worked on providing us numbers for 27 to give us a baseline, right? So that in 2026, we don't have to go back to the drawing board and recreate the whole entire wheel for 27. We have those base numbers based off of what was approved for 26. And so with that being said, if we keep everything the same for 26, meaning the service levels of 6 firefighters that was added in 26 to assessing, moving out to Hennepin County, to combining of public works and engineering, and putting our capital levy, that is one of the biggest difference, putting our capital levy focus back to where it was, we are looking at a 9.82%. Nonetheless, I'm not saying that is our recommended budget. We know we cannot stay at the 9.82, but to say, hey, to some certain degrees, this is our base budget based off of what we committed to in 26.
Or starting position.
Or starting position. And again, with this, there's going to be decision points that comes when we're going to have those hard conversations of, okay, now that departments submitted their capital, now that we have departments re-review their budget, what does that look like in terms of bond issuance opportunities, right? What does that look like? What are the scale of those projects? Do we move things in and out? That is for the later part of the year.
I think what we're showing here for projected 2027 is what we believe, how it projects if we take status quo, if we take existing service levels and employees and move them ahead by a year. So that is not our, let me be clear, that is not our goal, that is not our recommendation, but that's what we think our best information tells us right now.
And then
I keep hearkening back to what you said last year, and it seems to me like this is something we could potentially do between now and April 28th, and that is, you correct me if I'm wrong in characterizing what I recall you saying. What if we came in, what if we said, don't have a budget that exceeds 6%? What does that look like? What if we have one at 7%? What if we have one at 5%? What does that look like? What does that mean we have to do to get there? So that we're not coming in on April 28th and then we get your perspective only on what you think the budget potentially would be with that confidence factor that he's talking about.
Yeah.
But at least that's one way another way to think about it.
Right.
Is that, so that when we can't, we don't, that way we keep moving forward and we're not waiting till April 28th for you to tell us something and then we react to it. But we've got several different options that we can look at. And then we get to make choices.
I like that. I think that's important. The other thing is transparency with the public, and this does tie into the subsequent topic about the new standards. This document that we're looking at is a board portal item, so it's not easily accessible to the public, and we're just recording this, the audio, so anyone listening can't see this, and they can't, so transparency I think is important, because early on, we've got to get feedback from the community, so.
I don't know why this is a board portal, because we ran ADA on it, so I think that might be an error. We actually, that's part of the reason the presentation is shorter too, is that, but this is ADA compliant, so we can fix that. That's not negating your issue on other things, but I actually think this presentation is compliant.
If it is, it'd be great if we could get it posted as soon as possible.
We wanted to do that.
Okay.
So what we will have on the April 1st, we'll have a it feels like what the departments are gonna bring back is, a zero-based budget. However they decide to start, wherever they start from, they're gonna come in with numbers. We'll have a baseline number from that we can compare to this number. That number will tell us how close those two things are. And that's, I think, by April 1st, that's a pretty good position to come into that early in the year, to know here's what our departments think they need to spend, and here's what we projected we would spend. And that's where we start all right, those things are not gonna be the same. They're gonna be an order of magnitude one way or the other, right? It's just, at that point, it's just data. And then being able to say, if we needed to come in at 6%, 7%, or whatever, what would those things look like? And I think if we did that in the first retreat, I think that would be good. The only other thing I would encourage you guys to do is, and not today, but ask us why we felt blindsided with the first budget. Because I think that'll be informative. Like for me, I'll give one answer why I did, even though I said don't ask us now. The timeline that you're showing the points that I'm talking about don't stick out here. So it just feels like we're gonna get caught off guard again. Just in the way that this timeline is presented. Because the city departments, you group together Feb 24 to March 31st, and then you start with March 3rd. And it just feels like we're gonna have less information by the time we get to April 28th. And that's not true. In the way I'm interpreting what you're showing us, we'll have a lot of information by then. Probably more than we had last year at that time.
We definitely are in a better position than we were last year at this time, because every other year it's gonna be like this though, because the biennial budget nature, right? We did prepare an operating budget last year, so we are much more confident the 9.82 is reflective of actual numbers versus when we were previous, the 17% or whatever we had, that was truly a projection just based off of calculations, not an actual budget. There is a starting projected budget. We will do everything that we can to have as much information and variables for you to flesh out in April. I'm not super confident, just based off of the timeline and how long things take, that on April 28th, because backing up a week to give you all time to digest it, that we are going to be able to say, here's a 5%, a 6%, and a 7% budget. But we are definitely going to have a lot more fleshed out in terms of, here's what we're seeing from a debt service perspective. Here's where these projects we seem to have aligned with what's moving forward, what could be pushed back, what are some operating options that we can begin to have discussions upon. But I don't know that we're going to have a fully fleshed out 3 different budgets for you to choose from by the end of April. I just want to be as realistic, and I don't want to set expectations that we're not able to achieve. So,
I think we were thinking 2 budgets, but as I look at this schedule, I am bothered by the fact that we have the preliminary levy on September 30th, and then we don't have anything until November 17th, leaving all of October just, it would be convenient to have a meeting there, because after the preliminary levy, we will be hearing from people. And, it would be nice to have something in October.
Another reason I suggested that we use your method from last year, at least to be able to see what it's like. And maybe it's not by the end of April, but maybe sometime before the 28th of June, whatever that next session is. What is this? 23rd, June 23rd. We have some expectation at those different levels as to what a budget would look like, because there's a bill at the legislature right now that would preclude cities from raising their budgets more than the consumer price index. And if something like that gets traction, we better know what the impact is. Because we may want to go over and testify against it or for it, I don't know, but.
What is that currently?
Like 3%.
3%?
Yeah, it's like 3%.
Yeah. I have some thoughts about the CIP.
Yes.
So we can go to the picture of the debt service levy.
Yeah, we can jump away from the timing issue.
So for me to understand the CIP, I have 3 areas that kind of came to mind as I started thinking about this. The first one is I'd like to have a list of the big projects that are looming. So we've got that, you've got some potential ideas in there, but I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 potential huge projects or significant projects that may require bonding. So, and I'll give you this list, but roofs, Edinburgh Park, Wooddale Bridge, Fire Station 3, the expansion of the pool, the expansion of Braemar Clubhouse, the ADA ramp in Grandview, the Lewis Park outdoor ice, and the new main entrance at Braemar. So those are big projects that have come before us. The second question I have is our necessary annual expenditures. So what do we need to spend on asset preservation and what do we need to spend on equipment replacement? Just sort of looking at it at those terms. And then my thing that, is probably an impossible ask, but I'm going to ask anyways. How much depreciation do we take every year? Are we investing that same amount annually? And when we talked with the pool, I know Julie talked to people at the League of Minnesota Cities, and I did too, and they're like, well, when we have to do something like replace the pump room at the pool, we save. Well, we're way behind what's needed in our capital asset preservation and capital replacement. But how could we possibly look towards a regime where we can start saving for some of these projects? Is that even feasible in our lifetime, given how far behind we are? But so those are my questions, and I'll give this to you, Pa. I've got it written down.
Okay.
But that's kind of how I'm thinking about the CIP. I'd like to just get an understanding. Besides you've got the list of all the projects, but kind of what is the nature of the projects that are on the CIP, and how looming is the age
How
out
are
of
they
it?
projected to be financed?
Yeah.
Is that what, did you have a few sales tax, like the entrance at Braemar? Were you thinking of Braemar Ice Arena?
I hadn't thought about how they'd be funded. I didn't go that far. I just know there are projects out there, and to me, it feels a source of anxiety almost because they're kind of looming and they're not named. So I kind of want to get them named first, and then once they're named, how do we go about covering this?
That's next up. We will see you on the 17th for State of the Utilities, and then we'll do retreat, State of the Facilities. It's going to be great.
You go back to that debt service levy,
Oh, sorry.
He wants to see that debt service.
Okay, yeah, let me get it back up.
We'll
was
get
there
this.
anything coming off of bonding? This year?
Good question. So 26, we do have the, oh gosh,
The gymnasium.
gymnasium one is coming off. We make our last payment,
You mean in 26?
26, we made our last payment just this February, so we're not bonding for it in 26.
And then fire
28
station
fire
1
station.
comes off in
Correct.
2027.
Yes.
So some small ones, relatively.
And then those future projects that I did not name here, those includes the citywide roof, Public Works cold storage, PD and City Hall, Civic Campus, Fire Station 3, and then the Public Works building, so.
When we review this next time, could you break out the future potential? I like the shading that you've done to indicate that it's potential. But I think even understanding how are those stacking would be really helpful.
Yeah, and
we'll also extend it past 2030 too, considering the fact that we're building the CIP through
The
32.
other thing I think you should do for discussion purposes is, right now when it rolls up, when we roll off making a payment on something, because it's been paid for,
Sure.
you still keep collecting the money and it goes into the construction fund, is that where it goes?
Well, right now, what's happening is we set a number, right, in the budget. So for debt service, we set a certain number that we need. That number went down, the number for the gymnasium fell off, right? But we still needed more than that when we did the fire station number 2 coming in. So it's kind of a wash that it just went to more debt service. And that's pretty much what you're gonna see going forward if we continue to do the projects. Some of this, you might make choices to not do projects, and then you would see debt service coming down, but all of this is choices you as council will make to reissue, we set a number, it's a number that you're setting.
But to the mayor's point, we have a, policy that.
We don't
We don't have a
We don't
policy, I
do it
don't think.
anymore.
But I think it's worth having that conversation, because, I mean, you talked about it in a budgetary accounting sort of way. But for many people, they would say, okay, what's the payment on fire station number 1 that's gonna go off the books in 2027? You know, and why are we still collecting it in some form and rolling it to something else?
Like, to me, that's
We paid it off, stopped collecting the money.
yeah, and I would say that what we're doing right now, and not, I know in the past that you guys used to have a practice of doing that. What I would say we're doing right now is, we're not collecting money for fire station number 1. We're gonna be collecting money for the projects that are shown here. So that money is going to a different project. So yes, we could say we're not collecting that, but we're still collecting that same amount of money, or in fact, a greater amount of money, because that's what's on the debt service schedule.
I think what the mayor is saying, previously we hold the built-up tax capacity that's built
Yep.
within this. We move it to construction fund, right, to fund those projects that we say we're gonna fund with the construction levy. But then that hasn't been the case for the last 2 years, I wanna say.
Probably the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of complaints about it's illegal and it's not, and it was not transparent, but it was clear when we've talked about it here. But we don't do that practice anymore.
Okay. Well, I think it's good. You don't do that, because I think people have a legitimate concern about it.
Great. More details to come. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Jennifer? Did we give you enough time?
We'll see what we can get through.
Okay. I'm going to, greetings. I'm going to try to go through some of the introductory stuff kind of quickly, since I talked to you about this at a work session a few months ago. But as a reminder, in 2024, the Department of Justice issued a ruling that governments over 50,000 in population have to meet what's called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Basically, ADA for digital communications on or before April 24th, 2026. Smaller size governments, so some of our peer cities that are smaller, like Hopkins, they have another year to get into compliance. We have a lot of city websites, applications, and digital platforms. In fact, we have more than 40 of them. And to be honest, I learn about a new one every week that I work on this project. You know, they range from our big websites like EdinaMN.gov and Better Together Edina.org and EdinaLiquor.com to very small applications for work scheduling or league scheduling in parks and recreation. The ones that are in green are really employee focused. The rules apply to both public facing and internal facing. There's not any leeway. It's for all people of all abilities. I will say though, our focus is on our public-facing apps and the bigger ones as we work toward compliance. So our first thing is reviewing all of those apps to make sure that the platform itself is compliant. And then we need to worry about the content that we place on those applications. For the content that we place on those applications, those are mostly documents, images, videos, audio files. And then, of course, I've got to write a policy for you to approve at an upcoming meeting and a remediation plan.
Well, could you go back to that slide?
Absolutely, whoops.
That top bullet point, review web-based platforms and apps to make sure they are accessible. Well, if they're just internal, what does that mean? Does it mean everything's got to be accessible by the public?
So, the internal platforms are things used by staff.
Yeah.
Right? So that's an internal, but it still has to be compliant.
Okay.
Am I answering your question?
I think compliant is a better word than accessible. Compliant with accessibility rules.
Correct.
Not necessarily like you can't look up Jennifer's private
Personnel file.
Yeah.
So requesting compliance documents from vendors has been a big lift. This is a rule that applies to them as much as it applies to us. What we're requesting is what's called a VPAT, a voluntary product accessibility template. And once they fill out the template, it produces an ACR or compliance report. I do not have all of them received back from vendors, though we've been requesting them for over a year. I do have the majority of them, and of those we've received to date, we have 4 platforms where the platform itself is in compliance. There's a lot of work to be done by our developers at a high cost and a timeline for them as well. Of course, we're pushing for them to be in compliance, so I'm asking, what are your plans? What's your timeline? Those of you who have worked with software developers will believe me when I say they're very hesitant to give me timelines because if they say it's going to be something they launch by April 21st or June 1st, they know all their clients are going to be calling on those dates asking where it's at. But we're doing the work, we're doing the due diligence and asking them for those plans and timelines. We did redesign our primary website, EdinaMN.gov, and it launched last fall. Even that platform is not in full compliance. They promised it to us, but there are still areas of the platform itself that are not in compliance. Other things we've done in the last year and a half, we've started to make decisions about moving away from some platforms. South Metro Public Safety Training Facilities website was on its own, and they have now moved on to our primary city website platform. Braemar Golf is doing the same. They're moving from one WordPress platform to a newer, more compliant one. As you know, the city clerk's office upgraded their platform for agenda management, and they created some standards for how documents are posted on that platform. We've continued to provide training on creating and soon presenting accessible presentations to staff. We've got a lot of documents out on sites. So in the case of the primary website, we've given each department a list of those documents that they have out there, and we've asked them to move them into archive, remediate, or in some cases simply remove them from the website. And of course, we've remediated city templates that our staff use throughout the organization. As a reminder, this is just good work to be doing. It's not optional, it's about providing that equal access to public information. More information doesn't always mean better information. Studies will show that when information is presented more simply and when it's not as voluminous, people are able to comb through it easier and better understand it. I've been here a long time. I've been here for 26 years, and I've seen council packets change a lot. We used to do this thing, maybe Mayor Hovland, you'll remember, where we had what we called the back of packet, and letters and emails and notes from the public or invites you got to different things. We just shoved it all in the back of the packet. And then we found, you know what?
It was hard copy.
Yeah, it was hard copy back then.
Drop it off at your house?
Yes.
We did that when I was on planning.
But we also realized over time that maybe if you sent a thank you letter to staff for the paramedics showing up at your house and saving someone in your household, that you didn't really intend for that to be public or end up on a website. So we had to scale back. And I think we're just at that next evolution where we're really looking at what we need. And instead of just like, let's put it in the packet just in case, let's be more thoughtful or intentional about what we're putting in that packet. Since we changed our process for your packets, board packets, we've told people very clearly, if it's public, it's still public. You can request it, and we've created some clear language on how to do that. But since that has gone into place, we've had exactly one data request. That hasn't changed this week, has it, Sharon?
It has not.
One data request. So I just want to point out that I do really believe that streamlining really helps focus attention on what matters most. The staff analysis, your key decision points, and the context residents need to engage in a manner meaningfully. Yes.
It doesn't have to be this moment, but at some point, will you walk us through the process that residents have to take to do the request?
Sure.
I've never done it, and I'm curious if I could ask questions about it, if I could tell people, like, it's so easy.
It is really easy. It's a simple form on our website where they're going to provide a name and email address and what they're asking for.
Okay.
But I will certainly show that to you. Another big thing is documents are really hard on mobile devices to view because you're scrolling both up and down and left to right. And PDFs are mostly presented that way. And so you're making it harder for people to even understand the information that you want them to have. So I really do want to make the case that removing documents doesn't mean we're eliminating access to information in any way. I also, I'm really proud of the work we do in communications, and if it's a big issue, we're going to use all of our other platforms to communicate that information. One of the things I know you've wrestled with was, we'll just take as an example, the Braemar Arena stakeholder presentation deck. Let's remember, that presentation deck was prepared for a group of stakeholders, and we had meetings with all of those stakeholder groups. Then we used all of our communications platforms to share information about that project. It was the front page of Edition Edina. We used social media. We used our video. We did pitches to the media. We issued press releases, and we made ourselves available to answer any questions we had. That was not a public hearing. That wasn't anything that we needed to gather the public's information on, though we did have information also out on Better Together Edina. So I would argue we did share all of that information that was in that stakeholder deck with the community, just outside of your council packet. So is there a loophole? Kinda, but not really. There is a provision that says if there is a financial or administrative burden that we may be able to get out of providing either the platform or document in compliant form. It's important to note that our city attorney has told us that applies to individual items, not a collection of items. We can't say all council packet items. That would be too hard or too expensive to remediate. But I also want to point out that last month, the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs announced that it plans to publish what's called a Notice of Proposed Rulemaking to reconsider some of these provisions because they realize that this is an unfunded federal mandate. So I'm telling staff, like, don't count on us getting out of this. It's still appropriate for us to be working on this. But everything about this is expensive, and I think finally the federal government understands that. They're hearing from enough of us that they may either give us a longer timeline to get into compliance or allow us greater leniency on some of our larger documents or legacy platforms. Right now, there is a process for determining what's burdensome. First of all, we have to document the compliance costs. We have to present that to a compliance officer. That compliance officer will have to provide a written statement of reasons. And then we would have that filed in case there's ever a complaint. Again, I really want to try to assure you that this isn't about reducing transparency. This is simply ensuring everyone has equal access to public information across the city. It's a lot to take in. It is discouraging to say we will not be in compliance by April 24th. I don't know of any city really. There are states like Colorado where this has been a state law for a while, so they're largely in compliance. But the rest of my peers across the country of populations 50,000 or greater, we're all just trying to do as much as we can, but with very little hope of being in full compliance across every platform by the April 24th deadline.
So one thing that would be useful is when this rule first came down, you started working on it right away, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you haven't been dragging your feet, we're not, or anything, you've been at this, it's just really big and really complicated.
Yeah, it's a lot of publication, or it's a lot of education just to our staff, right? Like, I didn't even know some of these platforms existed. And so when I hear about one this week, I'm starting at the beginning with the owner of that platform. So.
Would it be possible to get the planning commission on my board portal? Just because a lot of times I will look at their content.
I don't know the specifics of that platform. Sharon's the owner of that, so maybe she can answer.
We'll have to take a look at it because we assign you to the groups that you need access to.
Right.
So we can take a
Probably.
look and see.
It's probably possible.
Or I could just submit a data request. I could start doing that.
I mean, ideally, we can meet your needs outside of that
Right.
process, so
Yeah. We'll follow up with
we
you.
will try to figure out how to do that.
I like to watch the planning commission, or if I know there's a project coming up, I'll want to look at their packet. And if it's a board portal item, I can't see it. And so I couldn't, there have been like 3 documents I couldn't look at. And it was just kind of frustrating.
Okay. The benefit of compliance is we're going backwards in some ways. Stuff you could see before, you can't see anymore.
Exactly. No, but then
Different
I
way.
found one, it got presented earlier in 2025, and I figured it out, and I felt very sneaky because I got back. I found one of the things that I needed, but.
There's some more things coming to your meetings that you'll see. I mentioned that I will bring you a digital accessibility policy to approve likely at your next meeting. But you'll also see, if you haven't already seen, a change in how staff prepare their presentations and present them. As Julie correctly, Councilmember Risser, correctly pointed out during Director Tao's presentation, we have to provide audio descriptions or closed captioning for any audio or video. So gone are the days where we can just rely on a PowerPoint and not just say every word on a screen or describe every picture, graphic, or chart in order to be in compliance. So that will take some adjustment. We will not be perfect in May when you start hearing presentations in that way. It's going to seem weird when people are reading everything on a screen and describing every graphic. But again, that's the way that a blind person could really participate in the presentation.
We think you'll see less graphics too going forward because of just the nature of having to explain them. So PowerPoints might get much more simplified and less creative.
Remember when PowerPoint first came out and, you know, it was really the backup dancer,
That's
not
what
the
Jennifer
main
said
act?
to everybody.
I think that's what you can expect again.
Okay,
I just want to thank you
Yes.
for all of the work
Yeah.
that you've
a
done.
lot of work.
I understand that there's the federal law, and we're not gonna meet it, but that isn't something that I think of as a failing of our staff or anything like that. I understand the focus and the difficulties that you've
Every
encountered.
department is working on this.
Is AI helping at all?
I think so, and Scott probably about a year ago said, Jen, isn't there gonna come a time where AI can just like add all these tags to all these documents for you? And I think he's right, that it will come, but we're not quite there today.
It is helpful with the alt
Should
text.
sell that
I mean, that's
product.
probably
We might
the
only be
biggest
like
thing.
3 months away though. It's like the way that it's like exponentially just like taking off, like it might not be that far.
And Microsoft has great built-in tools, and that's a software platform most city staff build their materials in, so that's all really encouraging stuff.
Okay.
That's all we got.
Adjourned.